My name is Savannah. I'm standing outside a quiet coffee shop in a small town, the sun beating down on the Arizona asphalt. Across from me stands my father, Robert Thompson, a man who once thought I'd be back at his feet within 2 weeks. Now, he's signing papers that give me the power to decide his fate. It's a moment that feels both surreal and long overdue. 10 years ago, I was 18, a young girl with big dreams and a passion for engines. We lived in a small, picture-perfect neighborhood in Tucson, where everyone kept up appearances. My father was a successful real estate agent, always chasing the next big deal and obsessed with social status. My mother, Linda Thompson, was a high-end boutique owner, more concerned with her image and the latest fashion trends than with my true happiness. They had a vision for my life. I was supposed to go to an Ivy League school, major in finance, marry a wealthy man, and live a life of luxury. But my heart belonged to the world of aviation maintenance. I loved the smell of jet fuel, the precision of tools, and the satisfaction of fixing a complex mechanical problem. When I was 16, an old mechanic named Mr. Harris let me help him in his small hangar. That summer, I realized that I felt more alive surrounded by engines than in any classroom. I started spending every free moment at the local airfield, asking questions and learning everything I could. But my parents didn't understand. Dinner conversations turned into battles. My father would scoff, saying, "Smart girls don't get their hands dirty in hangars." My mother would wrinkle her nose and say, "Aviation maintenance is no career for a girl like you." They couldn't stand the idea of me choosing a non-traditional path. The breaking point came when I received an acceptance letter to a top-tier aviation maintenance program in San Diego, with a partial scholarship and an internship at a well-known repair shop. I brought the letter to dinner, excited to share my news. My father didn't even let me finish. He slammed his fork down and shouted, "No daughter of mine is going to throw away a proper education for this." My mother looked at me with disappointment, as if I had committed a great sin. I told them that this was my choice, that I wasn't asking for their permission. That was the last straw. My father stood up, his face red with anger, and said, "If you're old enough to make your own decisions, you're old enough to leave this house." My mother, without a word, went to the closet, got my old duffel bag, and placed it by the front door. I packed quickly, grabbing a few clothes, my laptop, my birth certificate, and the $350 I had saved from my part-time job at a local diner. As I walked out the door, my father said, "You'll be back in 2 weeks," begging for forgiveness. My mother just gave me a cold look and said, "The world is a harsh place for girls who don't listen." That night, I called my best friend, Lily. She picked me up in her beat-up old car and took me to her place. Her family let me stay on their couch for a few weeks, but I knew it was only a temporary solution. I was still in high school, legally an adult, but with no real support. I finished my senior year with a heavy heart. I worked long hours at the diner and on weekends at a cleaning service. I learned to stretch my money, to make every dollar count. I rented a tiny room above a laundromat, with a leaky roof and no proper heating. I ate cheap noodles and canned food, and I lost a lot of weight. But I didn't give up. I got into the aviation maintenance program, and it was tough. My days started before dawn and ended with sore hands and a tired mind. But every time I fixed an engine, I felt a sense of accomplishment that my parents could never understand. During my second year in the program, I met a woman named Dr. Amelia Reed. She was the head of the maintenance department at the school, a tough but fair supervisor. She saw something in me and took me under her wing. She pushed me to be better, to reach for the highest standards. Around the same time, I met Jake. He was a pilot for a small charter company. We had our first argument over a maintenance log, but he came back the next day with coffee and an apology. He was patient, kind, and interested in my dreams. He never tried to change me, and he supported me every step of the way. With Dr. Reed's guidance and Jake's support, I started to build my own business. At 25, I launched Skyline Aviation Services with a single van, a set of borrowed tools, and a few loyal clients. We took on the jobs that others didn't want, the emergency repairs and the difficult maintenance tasks. By the time I was 28, our business had grown. We had a proper workshop, a team of skilled technicians, and contracts with several major airlines. I had achieved what I once thought was impossible, but I still kept a distance from my parents. We would cross paths occasionally, at family gatherings or in the grocery store, but there was never a real apology, just polite small talk. Then, one Thursday afternoon, my phone lit up with 99 missed calls. My smartwatch vibrated so hard that I thought there was something wrong with the plane I was working on. It was my family, people who had ignored me for years, suddenly desperate for my attention. I didn't answer right away. I finished the diagnostic I was working on, because I wasn't going to let panic control me. Jake came into the hangar and saw the look on my face. He didn't tell me to call back, he asked me what I wanted to happen if the news was bad. Finally, I answered my mother's call. She was crying so hard that I could barely understand her. Their house was in foreclosure. My father had made a series of bad investments in a new real estate project, and he had also been gambling on sports. The debts had piled up, and the bank was about to take their house. My mother said, "We need your help." But beneath the tears, I could hear the old expectation. It was as if I was still the daughter who was supposed to clean up their messes. I told her I'd think about it and hung up. Within minutes, the guilt tripping started. An aunt posted a vague Facebook status about how ungrateful children abandon their parents in their time of need. A cousin messaged Jake, trying to pressure me indirectly. My mother put up a long, dramatic post about family and hardship. I was angry. They hadn't come to me with honesty and remorse. They were trying to shame me into helping them. I decided to take control. I texted my father and said, "I'll meet you both on Saturday at noon, at a neutral place. No relatives, no lies. If you just want money without truth, don't even bother." He replied quickly, "We'll be there." The next day, my mother deleted her Facebook post. I knew she was scared. I spent the next 2 days preparing. Every old wound resurfaced. I remembered the night I was thrown out, the long, lonely nights on the couch, the struggles to make ends meet. I realized that this wasn't just about saving a house, it was about setting boundaries and making them face the consequences of their actions. We met at the coffee shop. My father looked smaller, his shoulders hunched, his hair thinner. My mother was wearing too much makeup, as if trying to hide her pain. For a few moments, none of us spoke. My father started talking about the finances, trying to explain the situation in a way that made it seem like it was just bad luck. But I cut him off and asked, "How much did you lose gambling?" The silence that followed was deafening. My mother turned to him, her eyes wide with shock. He mumbled an amount, and my mother's face went pale. It was clear that she hadn't known the full extent of his problems. I then told them that before we talked about money, we needed to talk about the past. I laid out everything, the night they threw me out, the years of neglect, the public guilt tripping. I told them about the times I went hungry, the landlords who took advantage of me, and the constant fear of homelessness. My mother tried to say they had only wanted what was best for me, but I asked her if what was best for me included living in poverty. My father said he thought I'd come back, but I asked him what kind of father would risk his daughter's safety for the sake of control. I then gave them my terms. First, if I helped them financially, it would be a one-time thing. They had to sell the house within 6 months and move to a more affordable place. Second, they had to tell all the relatives who had tried to shame me the truth about their financial situation. Third, they had to attend family therapy with a therapist of my choosing for at least 6 months. Fourth, my father had to disclose all his debts and gambling losses to my mother. Fifth, they could never again try to control my life or my choices. They were silent for a long time. Then my mother asked if I hated them. I told her that hatred requires intimacy, and what I felt was caution. My father asked if I was really willing to let them lose the house. I said yes, because I needed him to understand that actions have consequences. Finally, he said, "We agree." My mother looked at him in disbelief, but he repeated it. They signed the papers, and as we stood up to leave, my mother whispered, "I never thought it would come to this." I looked at her and said, "Neither did I when I was standing on that porch at 18. My father followed me outside. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he said, "I didn't think you'd really make it. I thought you'd get scared and come home." I asked him if he understood what that meant, and he nodded. He then said, "I was ashamed of your career because I thought it made me a failure. I cared more about my pride than your happiness." He finally said, "You built a life better than the one I was trying to force on you." I should have said that a long time ago. It wasn't the grand apology I had always dreamed of, but it was a start. Over the next few months, they kept their promises. They sold the house, paid back most of the loan, and started therapy. I stopped dreading family calls, and I learned that I could help without sacrificing my own well-being. And as for that old voicemail from my father, the one where he was so sure I'd fail, I found it in a drawer one day. Jake asked me if keeping it helped or hurt. This time, I knew the answer. I played it once, heard the arrogance and the certainty, and then deleted it. I didn't need it anymore. My life was the proof of my strength and resilience.